I wanted to share with you some of the ways that I use something called cover crops. Now, cover crops are usually a term known more by farmers. They use a cover crop when there's not one of their main crops in a bed to cover the soil with something so that it's not bare. So there are certain seasons that I have more bare ground that I need to protect. I have cover crops that I use to cover the soil in the summertime, and then I also have other cover crops that in the fall we can plant them together that will grow over the winter to protect the soil over the winter when a lot of those summer crops start to die. Saved seeds from 2024, and this is a mix of sunflowers and a couple varieties of black-eyed peas. And in addition to that, I purchased more of this year. I used these a couple of years ago and I loved them. I would say the only problem with using them here is that they are a tropical plant, so they need a warmer winter than what we have in order to go to seed. So I'm not able to collect the seeds from these. I would have to buy new seeds every year. But the actual plants grow great. These are called sun hemp. And yeah, don't get worried. And this is actually not related to other types of hemp that you may have heard of. Hemp actually just means fiber, and it is just another kind of plant that they use the fiber to make products out of. So this is called sun hemp, and it's actually a bean. So it's in the legume family. And legumes are known for being really great cover crops because they add natural nitrogen to the soil. They're able to take the huge amount of nitrogen that is just floating in our air and bring it down into the ground, into a usable source. So you don't need to go out and buy fertilizers. Nitrogen is going to be your number one ingredient in most fertilizers. And in the beginning, when you're building this food forest, you might not have the fertility to go without any kind of fertilizers. So I'm not saying you can't ever use fertilizer. I just don't anymore. So what I'm going to do is mix a little bowl of the two of these, sun hemp, a bunch of sunflowers. I've got some black-eyed peas and the red rippers from last year. And I'm going to plant them around the garden where I need more shade, where I need some more cover. Let's go plant some together. I poured all of the seeds together. So this is 3 types of seeds I'm going to plant today, including sunflowers, black-eyed peas, which are also southern peas, cow peas, whatever you'd like to call them, and also our sun hemp. So this one is the red ripper. These were collected from last year. Once you buy a variety, if it does well in your yard and you save it, you won't have to buy those particular seeds again. And they become more acclimated to your climate each season. And, okay, what else? Got this black-eyed pea, what you would typically think of as a black-eyed pea because it's got a black eye. And this one is called the California black-eyed pea. This is the sun hemp seed, which looks like a tiny bean. See, I've got at least 2 types of sunflowers in here that I collected from my own sunflowers last year. One with a bit of a black shell. This one has more of a multicolor shell with some stripies, if you can see that. Isn't that pretty? I love seeds. Seeds already have everything it needs to grow inside it. You just need to give it the right conditions. So it's like we're partners. I'm going over to this part of the garden where I told you I was going to continue putting down black-eyed peas. But yeah, I gotta admit to you, I never did finish that project. So I still have this big bare spot. Let's see. Along this fence over to here, you can see how much these black-eyed peas have grown. I was supposed to have finished putting the black-eyed peas along this whole fence, but I ended up not getting to it. So now instead of just black-eyed peas, I'm going to do this whole mix we have here that does still include our black-eyed peas, but also our sunflowers and sun hemp. It's pretty bare right now, and I could do it on the outside of the fence or the inside of the fence. Since I have pretty clear access of the inside of the fence right now, I'm going to go ahead and do that. This is just my little 2-foot fence from Home Depot. Just a very inexpensive little fence. It's not installed permanently. You can take it off anytime. And I'm going to start by moving a little bit of the mulch away from the edge here. Yep, it's already getting dry even after all of that rain. Then it's just been hot again, and it hasn't rained for a little while, which we can't really have too much rain right now. Our lakes are pretty much full again almost overnight after all of that flooding. Here in my yard, I was very lucky that I was able to just mostly collect that water and have it just soak in. There was no flooding in my immediate area. There's still so much devastation, and if you'd like to help with the flooding that happened mostly in Kerr County, there are so many fundraisers right now to help the people in Texas. If you can, help any way you can. So here I am about to plant these seeds, and I'm going to need to water them in pretty good and keep them watered, because right now they're only going to be in contact with the soil at the very top. So that's the soil that's going to dry out first. And I want to make sure it stays wet, at least on top. Okay, I'm using my Cobra Head tool. Along this fence, I'm just creating a tiny little trench. I just only want it to be about 1 inch deep for these seeds. So you would do this based on how deep your seeds need to go. If they're tiny seeds, you don't need to dig a trench, but if they're a little bit bigger, like beans, peas, or sunflowers, they need to be about 1 inch deep. Okay, and now I'm going to take these seeds and just sprinkle them pretty thickly. I'm going to do what they call overseeding, because I have tons of seeds, basically seeding more than I need, so that at least a good amount of them are going to live. You know, it's a numbers game. Here we go. And just so I don't run out of time and forget to do the rest, let's do all of it. So again, I'm moving the mulch. And then I run into where I left off and started planting the beans again. I'll continue the squiggly trench with my Cobra Head. Okay, and again, just gonna sprinkle these quite thickly. Okay, then I'm going to cover this all back with the soil. And in this case, I can also replace the mulch because it doesn't need as much sunlight to germinate. I'll put the mulch back and then I will water it in and make sure I keep this area watered so that if I put my finger in, that I can still feel some wet ground up to about here. If not, I need to add more water. So now I'm just gonna close it back up again with my fingers like this. Just kind of like sandwiching it back together. Yeah, I don't care if it's perfect or if they're at the perfect depth, you know. I do believe that if you try to do everything perfectly, you just won't get that much done. Enough of these are going to germinate that it will be fine. Yeah, this ground is so dry already, kind of chunky. It's drying up. It needs more plants, it needs mulch. So that's what happens if you don't cover it with a thick layer of mulch or cover it with plants. The soil is just going to dry up. By the end of the summer, it's basically going to become cement, which means that if it does rain, it's going to be hydrophobic, which means it's going to repel water and it won't even soak in. So either you need to cover your soil with a thick layer of mulch, about 3 inches to 6 inches, at least here in Texas, or you need to cover it with plants. In addition, once these plants are here, they're going to shade this whole area, which is now a lot more exposed than it was before. And I want to be able to do some more plantings back here for fall, and it needs more protection. So it's going to protect the soil. It's going to also protect other plants by adding shade. So I could always add more mulch later, but I have so much mulch right here, just already on the ground. And mulch is, you know, wood chips, but also fallen leaves and any plant materials that I chop up. And they do eventually break down and become soil. So we're building our own soil that normally would take thousands of years, but we can actually make it happen a lot faster than that. All right, well, that's exciting. Thanks to you guys, I finally got this done. I'm going to go ahead and water this all in. And that is it, friends. I hope you try some summer cover crops. Let me know how it goes. And leave it in the comments if you enjoyed this, if this is helpful for you. Talk to you soon.